1943, I left Argentina, South America, where I was born in Buenos Aires in 1924. And my father died when I was 13 months old. And I traveled back and forth to the United States 3 or 4 times in my early years, until I was someplace over 12 anyway. In 1932, I enlisted in St. Albans College in Lomas de Zamora in Argentina, which is about 30 kilometers south of the capital city of Buenos Aires. That college was connected with Cambridge University in England. I was there on and off as I came back and forth from the United States until I graduated with senior school certificate from Cambridge University in 1940 or 41. It was either of those 2 years. I think 40 is right. But after that, I worked for an auditor in Argentina for 1 year. I think it was some outfit that was associated with Price Waterhouse. But I remember doing most of my mathematical addition and all was done mentally. We had no machines. There was no machine that could add figures for you or anything. So all our auditing was in the head. And I learned to add in my head, something you don't do today, of course. Anyway, when I came to the States, I came up to go to MIT, and MIT wouldn't take me in because I needed to study physics and more chemistry, which I hadn't taken in this British course at Cambridge University, which was mostly English and languages. Anyway, I joined the Marine Corps instead. It was very tough getting my mother's signature, but I got it. And I enlisted in Boston, Massachusetts. You have that date? I don't. Anyway, I enlisted there, and that was in the fall or summer years. And I went from there to Paris Island by train. The whole platoon from Massachusetts went, 90 of us. And we were shocked when we got off that train, because that's when they first started putting your feet down in one hole and cutting your hair off and saying, "You call me sir," nothing else. And they called every swear word in the Bible was something that they knew. Didn't need the Bible either. They got it anywhere. They'd throw it at you. Now, our senior platoon sergeant, who took care of 3 platoons, was really upset because he wasn't in the Pacific. He was a gunnery sergeant, and he was very well trained. He was a Marine from way back. I think he had more than 25 years in. And I think the reason he was back here was because of his age. But he decided anyway he was going to take somebody out of the 3 platoons and show them what he had learned. We didn't call it jiu-jitsu in that time, but we invented it and made it. But he took the biggest guy in my platoon by the name of Murphy, who was a boxer from Boston. Just an amateur, but he boxed. He was about 6'4" and about 230 pounds. And this little platoon sergeant was about 5'6", just over the minimum height, and weighed about 100 pounds, I think. But he did everything. The helmet that we wore then is referred to as a pith helmet because it's made of pith. P-I-T-H. Don't get it wrong. Anyway, he kept crunking this Irishman on the head on the top of his pith helmet till he had a nosebleed, and he kept dropping his M1 on his foot until he got a sore foot. And he decided to swing at this sergeant. That was a mistake. The sergeant called him out and they started a fight. And I think the only thing that happened to the sergeant was he took off his, in those days they all wore these cowboy or Boy Scout caps, you know that. He took it off and he handed it to another drill instructor and said, "Hold this for me." And he decked this big Murphy in no less than 1 minute, throwing him 3 or 4 times. And he never got, the little fellow never got a hit. Never got hit in the shoulder or the head or anything. Didn't even feel it. But I remember when he took his Boy Scout cap back, he dusted off the dust off and put it back on his head. That was it. That was the story of the Paris Island. It woke us all up. During the whole training there, the biggest episode was two things that happened. One of them we don't talk about because the man holds something and the other man holds the rifle. One says, "This is my rifle. I shoot a gun. This is my gun and I have it for fun." Now that's only for men. The other one was where they had us out in our skivvies and trained us to stand still at attention when mosquitoes and land crabs are all over us at night. Don't smack a mosquito. We learned that. Or don't try and dust them off your leg. We learned that. Or the sniper might be waiting for you. We learned that. From Paris Island, I know I had to go out for further training and rifle shooting and other stuff, climbing pine trees and such, up in what became Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And from there we went they were just starting to build a whole camp then. From there we went by train across the United States to California. And from California, after a few months there in the hole at a place called Camp Elliott, learning nothing but waiting for the ship to be available. And that was a Free French ship called the Rochambeau. And that took us from there to New Caledonia. And from there we went over to Guadalcanal, and we were taken under the command of Colonel, how did I forget these names? Red Mike Edson. And we went with him to New Zealand. Now, Red Mike Edson became a well-known name. You'll hear me talk about him later. But he went to the center command post, and we went to our battalion headquarters. And there in Camp Pahatanui at Paikakariki, New Zealand, we stayed. And we stayed in the, I think a 4-bunk wooden slot that was built for the Maoris, which were fighting over in North Africa for New Zealand. We were in New Zealand, by the way, to actually protect it from further invasion of the Japanese who were moving south then, if you remember. And we had Marine Corps divisions in Australia, and we had 2 in New Zealand. North of us at Auckland was the 3rd Marine Division, and we were the 2nd Marine Division in Wellington, south of the North Island. In the middle of that year, we're going on now, this is 1943, we went to embark from New Zealand in Wellington and travel north Tarawa. In the middle of all this, by the way, we did go on one ship maneuver and landing maneuver. I forget what island that was on, but it was just a test. It was just away from New Zealand. But on this one that when I'm talking about, we left for the Gilbert Islands, the island called Tarawa. You may refer to it as Tarawa. It's Tarawa in our language. I landed there on the second day, and we were assigned movement. Actually, we were delayed in landing the first day because most of the Marine Corps was, that division was, just could not land on that island. If you remember, the tide was not high enough, and the Japanese were really waiting for us, and they got most of us on landing. Anyway, I went from the main island of Tarawa with an outfit down the whole atoll length through all the islands to the end, another 25 kilometers maybe, or 30, and back. That was just to check it, to see that there were no Japanese there where they were, and there were none. They had all come back to the main island for the fight. We took Tarawa and got a presidential citation for that. We lost a lot of men. I think the total number lost was over 800, or over 1,600 total loss, if you can count the wounded. Yeah, that's 1,600, the total of us that landed. We went from there to the big island of Hawaii. Are you hearing it all?
It's perfect.
And at the big island of Hawaii, we built Camp Tarawa. And that was on, I think it was the Reed Ranch or something, which we paid, the United States paid rental for. It was between three volcanoes, the Kilauea, the Mauna Loa, and the Mauna Kea on the Big Island. And as you probably know today, the one active volcano has been active since 1996, I think, was the Kilauea. That one I remember walking underneath just to see what it looked like. That was when the forestry actually had a walkway underneath there. Now they don't, of course. But the officers took over Kona Beach, which is north of Hawaii, and we was restricted. We couldn't go there. We could only go to Kilauea, which was a town south. I think I've got the wrong name there. It's a town south of Camp Tarawa, and then further south is the shoreline, and then on to Hilo, the capital city, which was further to the east. I can't remember the name of that thing. Anyway, from there they took us, once we left we were to invade, and we were making a maneuver off Maui Island, and it wasn't successful. We lost a lot. The swells were too high. None of us landed. We came back, and when we went to land, we went to invade another island. We didn't know where we were going. We landed at a place on Pearl Harbor, the big island of Oahu. And we could not get out of the place. It was a concrete slab, I'd say about 300 square feet, fenced in with a 12-foot fence. And on this concrete slab, the only shade was the shade that was put over the containers that had bottles of beer. Now, the reason they had us ashore that way is they were scared that if we were put ashore at Pearl Harbor, we'd probably end up in too many good places and not come back for to disembark. They got us and landed us. They landed us off these landing craft and took us off in landing craft, and most of us had too much beer. Anyway, we kept going. The beer, by the way, was all 3-2 made in Hawaii. Not legitimate. Anyway, we went from Pearl Harbor down to the Mariana Islands, Saipan. And we landed, my outfit landed south of Garapan, the capital city of Saipan. And we were in the only thing that was bothering us was occasionally we'd be shelled from the southern island of I'll get the name as we go along. It's an important island. Taiwan. I think that's the island. Well, it's the island that's south of Saipan. Can you look it up in there? Yeah. If I see it.
Glasses too.
Oh, there you go. I don't know how I could forget that name. It was through the streets of Garapan, I know that one. It's very important to find this.
What was that map? It was a map.
Here it is, War in the Cave Range. That's it. Anyway, here we are.
Shelled from.
Here it is. Tinian.
You're being shelled from Tinian?
Tinian is the name of the island. I think I gave you Taiwan. That's wrong. I knew it was wrong. That's why I hesitated. Tinian is the name of the island. It's an island that's situated south of Saipan, and it's an island on which the division that was with us, another Marine division, was the 4th Division, took it. In the middle, between the 4th Division was on the west coast of Saipan, and the 2nd Marine Division was on that's my division, was on the east coast with Garapan. In the center was a 3rd Division, which was an Army division, which somehow I think the general he entrenched the Army division about 1/2 of the way up the island, and it was finally taken over by Colonel Red Mike Edson, who was then a general. And the Army general was sent home. I think another General Smith was his name. Anyway, later on I shall tell you more about this one. After this, on this island of Tinian, the Japanese had a railroad going from one coastline east to west on Tinian, on which they ran a railroad, and they had an artillery weapon mounted, which went from one side to the other. That is the one that, fortunately, the shot that reached within 1.5 feet of me was a dud. But it came from this 155 pistol Pete, as we call it. Anyway, nothing happened to me. They just put me in a foxhole and tried to say everything was all right. It was. I didn't know what it was. And after the Battle of Saipan, Tinian was taken by the 4th Division. Okay? From Tinian, the airplanes left, which later dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. It dropped the bombs that hit the 2 cities.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay? That did it. I pronounce it differently than you do because That's the way we learned it in those languages.
You were there. I read it in a book.
I don't know. It's probably you're right. I'm wrong. Anyway, that is the island that was secured. From there, all our bombers, by the way, that flew out of there went over Tokyo and all over the place. And they were taken care of if they were hit. A lot of those planes had to land in Iwo Jima. And they were taken care of there by Marines that had taken Iwo Jima. And it was fortunate that we had Iwo Jima then. As well as it was to have Tinian. Those things should never be forgotten. Well, after Saipan, instead of sending me home to Hawaii, they said, we're going to dispatch you from our division. You didn't see enough combat anyway. We're going to send you on to Saipan, which is another island in the Marianas. And it's still further south. Now, what had happened unconsciously, and I didn't know about it, we landed south of Agana, the capital city of Guam. My brother had gone through the transfer from the Atlantic Ocean, and he landed with I think he was in an anti-aircraft battalion, I'm not sure. But they landed north of Agana.
I want to stop there. What was your brother's name?
My brother's name was John.
And he was originally fighting in the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, that's right. We didn't go over that? Oh, yes we did. He's the one who enlisted in 41, excuse me, 6 months before Pearl Harbor. He joined the Marine Corps and he served in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean on the USS Cleveland, which was launched in 1941. A cruiser.
And then he was transferred to the Pacific.
Then he was transferred to the Pacific, and I didn't know anything about that one. But he was transferred, and I finally found out his outfit had landed. And after the island of Guam was secured, I took leave of my outfit and went to visit his outfit and talked to his first sergeant. They told me he had been wounded on the day he landed and had been taken off to a hospital ship. And by the way, within 24 hours he passed away, and he was buried at sea in what was called the Mariana Straits, the deepest part of the Pacific. At that time, I don't know how true that is. Anyway, that's all I know about him. He was buried at sea. No flag or anything else goes with you, you know. You just slide off in a bag. That was my brother John. Anyway, from there, I went back to Hawaii, and I could not get... The only way I finally got back was my mother talking to the adjutant of the chief general of the Marine Army, the commandant, and they said he has to come home under the Sullivan Amendment, that he cannot remain overseas. He's your sole survivor. So I came home. And on that plane, I flew in with two Marine Corps generals, both General Smith. They had been called back to hold a meeting as to why they had taken over this Army division in Saipan. One was the Howling Mad Smith, who was the commanding general of the 2nd Marine Division, and the second one was Julian C. Smith, who was the commanding general of all of the invasion of the Marianas, and later he was commandant of Okinawa, and he was commandant of Iwo Jima, and commandant of Tarawa. Julian C. Smith. And then after I came home, they sent me to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, where I spent some time. I had a good time there, except I used all my yen notes at one end of the bar, I guess, in every place that had one. So all my yen notes went that I'd picked up. Those are Japanese souvenirs. I think everything I had from Japan went, all souvenirs. I don't have anything. Anyway, my mother said, "You can't stay here. This is what is happening to you at the Brooklyn Navy Yard." So they, Marine Corps said, why have him with his education and the fact that he's has a high IQ, we want him in a V-12 program. That's a V-12. You went to different colleges of your choice, and you studied to become an officer. And I chose Yale because it was halfway between Boston, where my grandparents lived, and Boston and New York, where my mother worked. But what happened was I decided to get out of the Marine Corps, and I was discharged, and I went back to Yale. I needed another 2 years of study before I graduated as a metallurgical engineer. And from there I went into iron ore beneficiating, where we opened mines in northern Minnesota and in Canada to process low-grade iron ore, mostly magnetite, to a high-grade 66% iron ore pellet, from rock to pellet, and shipped it. And we shipped it to the blast furnaces. The U.S. steel industry stayed its way, even though we'd run out of ore that could be fed to blast furnaces during World War II. We were running short. The only ore left was a little bit that was mined in the Mesabi, which wouldn't take care of anything, and what was in the southern ore mines in Alabama, which is very little. After I retired, I came here to live in a retirement home.
Okay, I want to go
Bye-bye.
back. I want to go back just a little bit.
I've forgotten a lot, eh?
You were 18 when you entered the service, right?
Yes.
It's pretty young.
I was 18.
How did all this feel? You know, you're going over to Japan, going to fight. Do you recall any of your emotions?
Yes. Oh yeah. We felt that not only was our country betrayed, it was that Hitler and Mussolini and Tojo, the three commanding dictators, commandors, were killing people, drawing blood, were treacherous. They had to go. We could not live in any world with people such as that. They had to go. Mussolini, Tojo, and Hitler, and what they stood for. We overcame that, finally. I think you don't know the end. The only end I don't know is what happened to Tojo. I know he went to jail. I think he served his time, and I think he died afterwards. But the others I know what happened to Hitler and Mussolini, but not with him.
What about your experience, like on the front lines as a young soldier? Do you have any emotions about that?
No. No, and that frontline fighting to me was the same as sleeping nights. I guess you just did it. It was there. If we felt it, I don't think we would have kept our intelligence. I don't think we would have kept our mind. I think we would have been crazy. And by the way, some of our folks did come home that way because they couldn't think, or they did think too much of their fighting, and it got them, and they couldn't hold on. But not me, no.
During your service, did you keep in touch with any of your family members or friends?
No, no, I didn't. That was something that at a young age, I felt that being away, I'd better stay away and not let many people know that I'm away or what I was doing, because I wasn't doing anything good. And the only person that I wrote to was the two people, really, my brother and my mother. Nobody else. That was it. I kept it quiet. Did I answer the question, Troy?
Perfect. Do you recall any humorous events besides when you were training?
No, I can remember many things that barroom brawls and everything else that went on in my time, but nothing that I'd keep in my memory book. I can remember more of some of the things that I did that weren't right.
Would you mind sharing or no?
I remember one that I had at Yale. They used to take my outfit out and running every morning, and I did everything I could, but I got in a closet with a pillow, and that was it. I never went running. That's something.
They wake you up early?
They'd wake us up early to go running, but I hid in the closet. Maybe that's why I'm in bad shape now.
Did you keep a personal diary while you were over there?
No.
No.
No diary. Never kept one and never wished to.
Did you ever get leave? Besides for when you went home, did you ever have an R&R?
No. Once you left, you left. You never come back. I don't know how I would have come back.
You said you were offered a chance to go back after you came home, and you refused.
Oh, yeah, later. That was in 1970. Oh, yeah, and then in 1955, I started having seizures, epileptic seizures. And that went on. The company didn't seem to worry about it. Although I had the minor seizures, the continuous minor seizures. The major seizures were taken care of with Dilantin, and they even had such things as that, I forget the name of the pill, Valium, I think Valium. They finally did away with that. And I took something else with the Dilantin. But Dilantin was the basic one. That used to control the minor seizures, my major seizures, but not the minor seizures. And a major seizure is where you lose consciousness and you're off. You're not in this world. They know it. Everybody knows it. In a minor seizure, you may have lost connection with everybody, and you don't understand what they're saying, and they don't understand you, but they don't know it. And what you do is, I used to learn to keep a smile on my face when I had a minor. I don't know how I did. I learned that. And the only ones that could tell were generally my wife and my children. And they said they told when I had a minor seizure with the enlargement of my pupils. I don't know. I couldn't tell you if that were true. Anyway, in 1970, I went through a further examination. The early examinations were with the Mayo Clinic, and they felt that I had a tumor. In those days, of course, things weren't quite as good. At the Cleveland Clinic in 1970, they said that it was something to do with the scar tissue on my left temporal lobe, which I had encountered from a car accident I had, or a bicycle car accident I had when I was only 7 years old.
That was funny. Would you tell us that? With your brother?
Oh, my brother had borrowed a bicycle somehow that had no pedals, no chain, and no brakes. And he decided he was going to give me, this was in Newtonville, Massachusetts, he was going to give me a ride on a bicycle. And I rode on the handlebars, of all places, but I guess I had to. And I know we came to a 90-degree corner going downhill. He said, watch me skin this car. And that car was coming uphill. And he didn't quite skin it properly. We went into the rear wheel. And I ended up with a fractured skull and a broken jaw. And my brother only had a fractured arm. And he said it was only because I put my arm out to protect you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a fractured arm. But anyway, that's the way it went. And after I recovered from that, which wasn't more than 2 or 3 months at that age, I recovered fast. Nothing seemed to happen until these seizures started. And what it was due to was a contraction of the scar. And during the surgery, they actually burned the scar open again and let it heal again. That's it. So they disconnected my skull, fixed it, put it back together, and here I am. Just